Gosh, that's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that. Like, what is the it factor?
The It Factory is back for season 2. Last season, we explored what the It Factory is, who has it, and how they got it. This season, we still seek to answer the same questions, but with a new cast of characters. We take the helmet off some of the new faces in the Conference of Champions, and some familiar faces as well. Players, coaches, and experts will explore what it is that sets them up for success on Saturdays. I'm Yogi Roth, and welcome back to the It Factory. Okay, welcome back, or welcome to the It Factory presented by Zayo. I'm your host, Yogi Roth, and it is one of the biggest weeks in sport, especially college football. It is the early signing period, or some are just calling the regular signing day period. It's when high school recruits sign their letter of intent and their dreams become reality. So we had to bring in one of my favorite people on planet Earth to come in and talk about not only early signing period, but also give advice to those that are about to enter college, those around them in their lives, because he's done it for a long time at the highest of levels. Today's guest, Chris Petersen, former head coach at the University of Washington, Boise State. He was a one-time coach at my alma mater, the University of Pittsburgh. Coach, you now work at Fox. You give advice to all of us on many things, me specifically to being a parent, so I appreciate that. Thank you for joining us today.
Awesome to be here, Yogi. I've been waiting many years to be on the It Factory, and so now I'm here. Let's go.
Let's go indeed. You've always been on the list of people to come on because you're so thoughtful. So we're going to get into a lot of that. But I'd have to ask, Washington just came off a historic season under first-year coach Kalen DeBoer. You live in Seattle still. You're close to that program. What has it been like for you watching him flip this thing after a year ago?
Yeah, I've gotten to know Kalen in the short time he's been here. And I think the thing that's really cool is Kalen is a really, really good dude. That's what I think about first and foremost. Like, I think he's just good to people. I think he cares about people. He hasn't, it's early in the job, but he's been coaching for a long time. But, the job's not squeezing him yet too much. And so it's just awesome to see him, a really good dude, elevate this program to where we kind of all think it can and should go. And so that's been fun to watch. The other thing for me, obviously, I know so many of those players, and it's been a hard few years. Like, since I stepped away, like, that's hard on them when I stepped away. We recruited so many of them there, and then wait, you're leaving? And then the struggles that they had to go through the last year, and another new coach, and that is not easy and not fun. But that's probably the most joy that I get out of watching those guys over there, knowing that they probably wouldn't be where they are today without going through a lot of that hardship.
Wow. That's amazing. It's a great dovetail into this week and the early signing period. Hardship is a unique word right now in college sports, right? Guys can bolt and leave and transfer whenever they want. And that's cool. Like, coaches can do it too. But there's lessons that I think can be lost along the way. So I'd love to start there. Athletes are signing and fulfilling lifelong dreams this week. They're going to sign and decide they're going to go to Washington. They're going to go to Boise State. They're going to go to their dream school. When you've been around those athletes that are about to make that declaration, what's the first thing that comes to mind as they sign that piece of paper?
That your mindset should be that I am locked in, and this is my new home for the next 4 or 5 years or 6, whatever it's going to take to have a game-changing experience in my lifetime. And like you said, Yogi, I mean, the transfer portal, like with everything, there is good in that. There is. Guys are going to make mistakes deciding on places, or things change or whatever. And so, but you know, in this day and age, to say, hey, I'm going to sign there, and in the back of my mind, if it doesn't work out, it's easy, I'm out. I think about all the kids that played for us over time. I think about the Boise State days, and I'm thinking, would anyone have ever really even stayed? And I think about myself going through college. I think about kids that we coached. And I always tell kids this: it is not going to turn out like you think it is. Like you have this vision of this dream, and I'm going to do all these unbelievable things, and it's going to be. And I still think you can do unbelievable things. And I think it can be a game-changing, life-changing experience. It's just going to be a lot different, the journey and the path to get there. And there's going to be a lot of adversity and a lot of hardship along the way, which is going to make it so sweeter at the end of the process. It is going to change you in ways that you couldn't change for the better unless you went through these hard things. And so that's the hard thing that you're going with, because it's so easy to say, this is too hard, this is not working out, I'm going to somewhere else. And then now all of a sudden coaches are maybe going to, you know, steer people away with money and NIL. And it's like, you're going for the wrong reasons. And so it's tricky. It is very tricky. I think you really have to have a really awesome support group that's super grounded on what this experience should be moving forward.
Okay, so here we sit 24-ish hours away from signing period or signing day and the window opening. And you lived it, I've seen it, where this last couple hours can be hectic. It can be crazed. So what would you tell a student athlete, a high school player that is about to sign, and he's been going down a road that he feels really comfortable on, like, I'm going to go to this school, I like this program, I like where I fit academically, I like all the things, and then boom, all of a sudden, all these other things sweep in and are really fun and enticing and exciting, and you're going and looking over this thing. Like, how would you guide them of how do you get back to neutral to just make a clear decision versus one that is impacted by so many externals?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't really think that that is a very hard question to answer, because at this point in the process, you know, 98% of the guys or 9 are decided where they're going to go. Those that are signing early. Your decision's made. Do not second guess it. You turn your phone off, or you do not answer those calls, those texts. You don't even look at them. You swipe them, delete. You tell your folks, help me with this. You tell your high school coaches, help me with this. It is over and done. Because you're talking about some professional salesmen that are out there, and their job is to create doubt. And it's very easy to doubt, you know, now you're making this really biggest decision of your life type thing. And now they're going to maybe even throw money at it and those type of things. Don't even go there. Do not go down that rabbit hole. It's over. It's done. Put a smile on your face. Enjoy this. If you start playing that game, like you said, you know, you look at your phone and that's kind of your phone, and it's fun and it's exciting. Yogi, actually, it's not fun and exciting at that time. It's very nerve-wracking. It's scary. Am I making the right decision when they're putting more and more doubts in your head? The decision's over. Leave it alone, commit, sign, go there, put a smile on your face, have a blast with it. Don't let the doubters and the naysayers get into your head.
Yeah, what I've loved about your path, you have this Built for Life program. It's got a ton of depth to it. But one of the parts of it talks about self-esteem and having, you know, the desire to make sure you build up self-esteem in athletes. I'm curious if where you net out on this take. I think athletes have always been fragile, especially the quarterback position, from seeing it at Elite 11. It's just a fragile psyche. You want to do so well, you care so much, but man, when things don't go well, like it can be hard at times. Now in this era of like, I can literally DM you, get into your brain. I can rank you. I can rate your NIL value. Like, there's so many things that I think externally are telling you what you're worth, impacting your own self-esteem. Like how would you, like, what's your take on that? And then how would you even guide a family who's doing this for the very first time?
Yeah. It's very easy to fall into the trap in the arena that these kids have lived in and are going into a bigger one, that, player equals person. Or really what ends up happening, player is greater than person. And it's never that. It is always person greater than player. It is so hard to separate those two things in the arena that you've been in, because that's where all your love and all the reinforcement is coming from. Tackling guys, scoring touchdowns, throwing this. Oh, there he is. He's now got followers. He's a celebrity because of what he does. And it is so easy to lose sight of that. And so, you mentioned the word self-esteem. So much of our self-esteem and who we are is tied into what we do and how successful we are. And now we're getting reinforced for that going through this next process. And as parents, as teachers, as coaches, as mentors, if there's like one message that we have to keep banging on these guys, it's person greater than, like, as hard as you work on your craft of being this great football player, if you could spend half the time thinking about and working on being this really great person, this great dude. And I know it sounds so cliche, but it's like, we need to keep those two things separate. We must. Because this is actually going to help you in your journey. Because when it gets rocky and you hit a pitfall, you're not going to go to the pitfall if it's like you're still secure in who you are and how you are. Hey, what you're doing right now isn't going as well, but I'll get out of this. But if it's all tied in to this, like, who I am, well, and my game's in the tank right now, because all of our game eventually does go in the tank. Like, that's just the progression. Then, like, who I am as a person. And so it's like, it's a double whammy.
Yeah.
Now I don't feel good as a person and I don't feel good as a player. And it's like, no, that's not it. And I will tell you, like, I know it's easy for me to sit here, not coaching and not being a player, because I felt that as a coach. Your identity can get, like, I think most coaches, they'd be lying to you. I think 95%, 98% hey, who we are as a coach, our record is tied into who we are as a person. And so if we could just reinforce that for all of us, man, I think we'd be a lot happier and healthier.
So years ago, I was on Nike's campus for the Elite 11, and I'll never forget it. I was talking to a mom of a quarterback, and the quarterback ended up going to the ACC, not playing, play a little bit, ended up transferring. But I'm sitting with his mom, and she looks at her son, good athlete, good passer. He wasn't Trevor Lawrence. He was a good player. And she looks at him, she goes, my baby's going to get us to the league. And it wasn't my baby or the league that stuck out to me. It was us to the league. Look, my oldest is 7, right? I don't have a 17-year-old that's got an amazing hose and can just deal. So I'm not living from experiences. But for my 20 years at the Elite 11 or so, and seeing a lot of families like that where it's us, it kind of gives me like, I don't know. You've recruited families and parents, and you've been in this. And I think it's really hard for a parent to disassociate from us as the player. What would your advice be? Is it to disassociate? Do you think that they should live in the similar plane of the athletic path of their child?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start on this, Yogi. It's just such a complicated, important topic. How do you simplify it in this short time we have? But I mean, my first thought is you have to, it's not us, first and foremost. It is not us. This is your child's deal. Let him go so he can grow. I mean, that's what I think about. And then you're there just to support him But that's a tricky word. What does that support look like?
Yeah.
And so that's the problem. Like, I have met so many good people that, in my opinion, in this arena that their son is in, really don't turn in to be the greatest parents because they are too enmeshed and involved in this thing. And I get it 100%. And Yogi, you do too, even though you have young kids. There's nothing more important to us than seeing our kid be happy, successful, those type of things. And there's nothing more important to us. And it's so hard for us to not live vicariously through, oh, that's my boy. And so I get how hard that is. And so one of the most inspiring things in life to me is a great set of parents or parent that can disassociate this thing. Like, hey, this is his thing. He loves it. I want to support him. But I just want him to be, enjoying this process and get everything out that he can get. And knowing that enjoying this process means he's not going to enjoy every minute of it. There is a lot of things that he's going to go through that are going to be hard, that he's going to second guess himself, that he's going to second guess, should I be here? Should I leave? And my job as a parent is to reassure him he's doing the right things. And, you got to go through hard things to get good things. And, those type of like life messages. I mean, that's my opening statement to that.
Yeah. I flash back immediately. I remember being a freshman at Pitt in Sutherland Hall. I don't know if you remember that dormitory when you were back at the University of Pittsburgh back in the day. But training camp, I remember at night looking up to the ceiling being like, I don't think I'm going to make it. Like, I got to go. I got to go home. And there isn't a freshman that I've talked to in the history of my career that hasn't had a thought like that. Now you have a thought like that after these young men sign. Some may already, be enrolling in a matter of weeks or so, but they're going to have that. And it's really easy to dip as we started off the show. But what do you think coaches could or should be saying to the players? Because back in the day, I remember Pat Rule, this famous offensive line coach. Guys would come into SC and he'd say, I don't give a rip about who you are as a recruit anymore. You're a stinking freshman and da-da-da-da-da. And it would kind of like take them off their pedestal. Now, like, I wonder if like how coaches can manage that. And then also for players, like, can you just accept the fact that it's going to be hard?
Yeah.
Or do you just want it to be, okay, everything's been easy for me because I've always been the best player?
And I will tell you what, like, sometimes I worry about these kids that have been the best players for a long time. I call it the too much, too soon syndrome, that they really have not had to grind through it like some other kids have. Yeah. That, they're still like all the guys recruiting end up being kind of the best players, but some of these kids weren't always the best players or had some adversity and injuries, and they weren't like 3-year starters, and they really did well like the last year and a half of their season. Like, that kind of intrigues me more than anything. The other thing is I think coaches do such a disservice to the families and to the kids when they don't paint the picture of what this is going to look like when you come here.
Yeah.
This is going to probably be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. Probably. I know some of these kids have been through some really hard things, so I don't want to, some real important hard things. This is still just sports, but this sporting thing, it's going to be the hardest thing that you've ever done in your life, this whole process. Because I go back to it's not going to go like you think it's, like we have these dreams. If your dreams are, I'm going to go through these really hard things and it's going to question myself and test me, and I'm going to hang in there and I'm going to become something way different than I even thought I could be, and I'm going to achieve these goals at the end of my process. That's a really cool dream. Yeah. But I don't really think people have that dream. But that's what the dream looks like.
Okay, so we know it's going to be hard, right? We know mom and dad need to disassociate. I've become a big fan of this phrase I learned from our friend Dr. Michael Gervais, where it was front loading mental skills. So if I know it's going to be hard, okay, I've accepted that. I know that I've got these amazing goals, probably leading with the NFL. Hopefully, somewhere near the top of that list is getting a degree as well. What can I do now? Like, how can I prepare myself? Because I want to ask you about one of your favorite idioms is E plus R equals O, right? Event plus response equals outcome. I want to get there eventually, but I do think there's something of like, how can I prepare myself for something that's hard? So I'm not just reactionary. The minute I get benched, or I'm not on the too deep, which is going to happen, or I'm not getting a sweet NIL deal, or maybe I am, but I'm not playing. I don't know how to manage that. Like, how can I give myself some tools to walk in an advantageous situation versus on my heels the whole time?
Yeah. And I think that's a great place to start from, the old E plus R equals O phrase, event plus the response equals the outcome. And the only thing in life that we truly control is our response to things.
Yeah.
And so, these really high achievers, really type A personalities, used to, get in their way and really thinking we control things. The only thing we control is our attitude, our effort, our response to the things that come our way. That's it. Okay, so I'm too deep right now. Or I'm going through something like, what can I do? I can only control my attitude and my effort. And those two things right there, starting with my attitude or my mental processes, let me just focus on that, the positive. Like, okay, how do I maximize my situation? Like, am I working hard enough? Because usually what happens when things don't go our way, and we get punched in the stomach, basically, or hit in the mouth, what do? We back off. We start to second guess things. What you need to do is work harder, is study more, is be a little more patient with the process, is stop comparing yourself to Johnny next to me. He's starting and I think I'm better than him.
Yeah.
I've already been down that path. I lived that as a player myself. My life early in my career was so miserable. I can't tell you how much this has helped me with players, because I know what they're going through. Like, you're always thinking, I'm better than him. Oh, what's the coach thinking about him? Oh, he just completed that pass. Oh, he just threw an interception. Oh, too bad. But really deep down inside, I'm glad. That has nothing to do about nothing. Like, it just really doesn't. It's like, it's just about you getting to your close as you can get to your potential. And if you can get there and maximize your skills, it's going to be good enough. 99% of the time, it's going to work out for you if you focus that way and you just worry about yourself. But in the world that we're in, with comparison, that's how we're raised. Good luck to you, unless you got some people around you really educating you on this.
I was talking to a quarterback who is at a premier school in the Big Ten. And he goes, since I was a sophomore in high school, I've been talking to a high performance psychologist. And I just love that, because if somebody said that 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, it'd be, you're talking to a psychologist. And now it's like, hey, you're giving yourself some tools. So like, I think now, like, I don't think we're fully there yet on like the mental health side of, hey, let's look at that like we look at the weight room, like we look at the film room. But I think that's something that I feel like, at least in our league out here in the Pac, like schools are leaning really into that a ton. Like, have you felt that as you've been around a bunch of different schools, and have you felt the impact of that? Or do you feel like there's still a long ways to go there?
Yeah, I and you're talking about the mental skills part of things and the sports psychologists and all that. Oh, 100%. I think that's where, a lot of teams are headed. Like you said, even some high school kids are on this. But I think we have a long ways to go. Yeah. Like, I think that's going to be really the difference maker. Like, everybody has a lot of really good strength coaches. Like we spend so much time lifting weights and running wind sprints and throwing and catching the ball and bending and all that, like tremendous amount of hours. And so in terms of moving the needle and separating ourselves, and it's really about the mental side of the game. But like, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole of like separating ourselves and now we become this like better player. That's part of it. But I think what we do when we go there is we become a healthier player. Like, let's not forget, we're playing this game and sports because we liked it at one time for the love of the game. And you all of a sudden, it's very easy for the love of the game to get taken away here because of a lot of different reasons that we're hitting on, of comparison, of social media, of NIL, of the expectations of winning, of the expectations of being a starting player right now. All that stuff takes love and joy away from the game. Yeah. And what are we doing here? So when you know all those things are actually taking it away, let's reverse engineer this. And how do we go about building the tools like you're saying? And that's what I think these sports psychologists can be so helpful at.
Yeah, the last summer, as you know, I wrote this book called 5-Star QB, and something that blew my mind in the research and the data and the interviews I did were young parents. So let's just call them junior high to early high school. They're saying, all right, how do I navigate this space? And NIL, to your previous point, it is a thing. So now parents are caught up, I believe, and I definitely think athletes are, of when you go and sit in front of any of these NIL companies, I don't want to name them all, we all know who they are. They say to you the following, and I've heard it, I've been in the room. You got to grow your numbers, your social media numbers. Okay, cool. Because you can go to on3.com, one of the recruiting websites, and it would say Chris Petersen's recruiting profile and his NIL valuation. And based on the followers you have, your valuation grows, right? You get paid this much per post, whether it's on any of the social media platforms. I feel as though the parents and the players are really conflicted now of, okay, I get like it can be the old rat poison, right? The Sabanism on social media, but there's like a business for me to grow here as well. And if I get these certain numbers up, I can get paid a certain amount. Why wouldn't I grow that? Why wouldn't I do that? And that scared the daylights out of me when I heard it. I'm talking from 5th grade on to sophomores in high school, let alone guys that are already being recruited. And I feel for the players because I think like you're tough. Like you want to leverage your skill. You want to get paid. Man, you might not recognize like it could be a dark side, or are you managing it well? So when you hear that, or if you were in a head coaching position now and you saw this phenom 8th grader and you're like, he got a chance, but all this other stuff's happening around him that I referenced, what would you say?
I always, it's interesting. I really start to, I shake my head and I'm thinking, God bless you, because you got a lot of hard things coming your way and you have no idea how hard this process is going to get for you and your family. Yogi, I worried about that, offering kids too early even. I knew as soon as like a kid would play his freshman year, and you could just tell like physically they're just different than everybody else. And I just like hesitated so hard to offer this kid early because I knew if we were one of the first guys to offer him, like let's just say in the Seattle area, we offered them how much their life was going to change and not for the better. They think it's for the better early on. Now, all of a sudden, they got all this attention. Now, here come the offers pouring in. And they're not even a finished product. You're just projecting how this is going to go. And so now this arena has, it's just a real corrupting kind of feeling of the next couple years of your high school career for not only the kid, but the families that are just telling them how great their kid is and here's what they can do and here's the money they can make. And the kid's just trying to be a high school kid and enjoy that. And so now how do I even, and so it's hard because But what I do think is I think some of this NIL money, I think, the big money, we're talking a really small percentage of the kids right now. So most don't even go there on this NIL. Don't be making decisions on NIL. I know there's some kids that are talking big money and that's going to factor in. I think 98% you're in a different. So let's just talk about choosing a good place where you think you can maximize, where you can do your best work, where the philosophy of the coaching staff and the program and the school and the academics and the location all line up to what you're about. And let's put all that stuff on the back burner. But you're going to be fighting society because all you're going to do is be hearing about this your whole entire high school career, especially if you're one of those kind of gifted guys early.
One thing that I find tremendously amazing is that the same percentage of college players are getting drafted, less than 3%, but a dramatic percentage of college players are transferring. We just came off of Portal Palooza, I think is what a lot of people were calling it, when guys were hopping in. What would you say to players that are playing? Because what surprised me is like a lot of starters are and have transferred. It's kind of, you got recruited once and now you're getting recruited again. And it's easy to say like the grass isn't always greener. And I don't want us to be like the get off my lawn crew here, but I want to just give an insight to the players that maybe have played a couple years at a school. And every situation is different, but I feel as though there's a dramatic sense of everybody's over there. Let me go take a peek. Let me go see. Oh, you're going there. Let me go see. Because I saw it work out for, call it Jordan Addison, Caleb. Like there's again that percentage where it killed it for him. But we're seeing so many guys bail, and what I'm worried about, coach, is that less than 3% of getting drafted, and I think the percentage of not graduating is going to grow. And I think like graduating isn't even like a thought anymore for some of these players.
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, so we're now all of a sudden down a different lane. What this thing should be all about. I will just say this. I really believe this, in 30 plus years of coaching, a coach doesn't want a kid to stay with them in their program if they don't believe that sooner than later, this player can play for them and help them win.
Yeah.
You don't want that and sometimes we miss, like you're not this level of player. You want that guy to go somewhere where they can play. That's the majority, by far the majority of coaches I know.
Yeah.
So I do think you should trust your coach a little bit, that if they really want you to stay, it's because they believe this can work out for you. Like we've seen, so many guys before you. It just takes a little more time than you think it's going to. And if you can't play here, I really don't want you to stay here because I want you to play. We get college football has a really finite window. The second thing I'll say off that is when you look at the transfer portal numbers, like how many kids are stuck and left in there, you hear about all these Caleb Williams, Jordan Addisons, those guys can go play anywhere. So we're talking about the 2%ers, the 3%ers. So let's not even talk about the kids that get stuck in the portal, which are, over 1,000. Let's talk about the kids that go in and go somewhere else. The majority of those kids, their situation is the same or worse in the research that I have done. Yeah. I look at them and I'm like, that's the same role they had at the place that they left. Or actually, that's less playing time than what they would have had coming had they stayed. I see that over and over. But we see these other marquee guys that could really go anywhere, and they're rare players, rare college players, and then everybody equates that's me, and that's not you. And it's just like an illusion that you're looking at that you think it's about the majority, and it's not. Yeah. I'm not saying guys shouldn't transfer, because sometimes things change and just like this was a wrong decision. But the majority of times, from what I've seen, you need to grow, you need to it's just not a simple thing it's just not going to go like, oh, and this is great. And I remember we had this, let's talk about Jake Browning, because I know you wanted to talk about him. Jake Browning comes to Washington. The leading pass, I think he still is, in the history of California throwing touchdowns, the leading touchdown high school passing champion in the state of California, most touchdowns ever. Someone might have broke it. I don't know the way they're throwing these balls. Comes up, graduates early, spring ball. I mean, and this guy is prepared now, like no high school kid I've seen. Comes from Troy Taylor. So he's as prepared as any high school kid in the country. Starts his freshman year. Get done. And this kid worked so hard. And I mean, it was amazing, his professionalism, how many hours he put on top of just the normal stuff. I remember asking him after his first year, what'd you think? And I think I just asked him that question. What'd you think? He goes, man, was that a lot harder and a lot different than I thought it was going to be. And this is the most prepared high school kid that I probably saw coming out. And it was just like, it was so hard. I mean, it was so hard he did great, but he's a true freshman and he's starting. And it was like the hardest thing he ever had to go through.
Yeah.
Hard, man.
Okay. So let's finish up on that thought around going to play in college is hard, whether you go from high school to D3 or to the Pac-12. It's a challenge, as you just referenced Jake Browning, and beautiful illustration of that. But hard can be fun. Like, there's a ton of joy in that. So for these players that have just made this decision, or those that are in recruiting 2.0, like thinking about leaving or going to a new school, what would you tell them about, making sure that wonder switch, that wonderment is still there for the game? If they had to go back to like one thought when it gets really hard, to keep them with a smile on their face playing a game that they fell in love with as a child.
I mean, I think that's really it right there, Yogi, right? It sounds so basic and so cliche-ish, but like, you weren't doing it for social media. You weren't doing it for NIL money. You weren't doing it for even a scholarship.
Yeah.
You were doing it for the love of of being with your guys, of working hard, of pushing yourself, of developing these unbelievable relationships. I mean, it's all that corny stuff. It really is. That all this other stuff that is, not bad stuff. NLI's not bad. I mean, if I can get a little extra money, awesome. If I can, if people are into like watching us play and compete and going into these 70,000 seat stadiums and loving our game, awesome. If I got a chance to chase my goal and go to the NFL, awesome. But when all that becomes the priority and the focus, which it does, there's going to be a problem with that. You're going to struggle.
I want to finish up with our final 5 questions here before we get you out of here. So first thought, first reaction. Question number 1. What's the best advice that Chris Petersen has ever received?
Yeah, okay. I need like 3 days to think about that question and probably these questions you're going to ask me, because really what probably it is, I've received so much good advice along the way that I have really not paid attention to. Think I got the answers and then go through all these hard things. And then look back and, and I'd be complaining, why didn't somebody tell me this? And actually people did tell me this. I just thought, I got this. I got this figured out. But with that being said, I would say, one of the things is probably like be patient. Like in the coaching world. So I'm not even going to the high school kids because it's the same thing we're talking about. One of the things that probably helped me the most is I stayed put a long time at a lot of places when I could have transferred almost every year and did not.
Yeah.
because, and for more money and all those type of things. And people are like, why wouldn't you go? Like, you know what? Because I'm really kind of enjoying where I'm at. Like, I'm really focused on my process here. And so the people that had advised me to like, happy, stay happy, focus on the process. Like, time will come when it's time to move on. But like, that patience word, and in our day-to-day interactions or our long-term goals, like it's a balance of really striving and achieving, and I need to be patient.
Yeah, what a great reminder. I would always wonder, like, how come he didn't take that job? Why didn't Chris Petersen take it? And we didn't even know each other, but to hear that, I think, is great advice for anybody. Okay, what's the worst advice you've ever received?
Again, I'd have to think about that, but probably what we're talking about. You need to take that job. I see so many coaches run off to a job for really, at the end of the day, a little bit more money. Like after taxes, it's not changing your life. It's not life-changing money. I say, I call it Happy Meal money. At the end of the day, you buy a new car, you get a little bit better house. Like what? That's not going to change your happiness. And so that's it. Like the worst is like, you need to get in that arena. Like you need to take that next job. It's like, why? For the wrong reasons. Yes. And so I've looked at that, and I've seen the coaches that are patient, that stay put at certain places, that are doing really good work. Like you're going to have even taking a head coaching job. I see guys run off the head coach, and I'm like, why would you go there? Or you're not really ready. Like we're never going to be ready. But like I see some of these guys getting hired for these jobs, and I'm like, oh my gosh. You sure?
Yeah.
Patience.
Yeah. I think that's amazing for players as well. Of you should transfer here. They'll love you up here. And I think it's a great reminder for those parents and players listening. Like, just take a beat here before you make a decision.
Yogi, I want to throw out just one cliche. Like I just have to, like you referenced it, that grass isn't always greener thing. I mean, I know it's like probably the number one cliche out there. The grass is greener where you water and fertilize it. Like, okay, that's one of those things I wasn't hearing back in the day, not listening to good advice, because it's like, one of my great pieces of advice would be like, pick out like 5 cliches in life. I don't care what they are. Pick out 5 and just live those cliches. Like have intentional like everyday thought process with those and try to bring them to life, and your life will change for the better, 1000% guaranteed.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like it's not the other place. It's like invest in where you are for some time.
I love that. Okay, so question number 3, you've had some time away from the sidelines. What's something that maybe has surprised you about what and how you view the game of college football now?
The thing that has surprised me is all the things that we're talking about, how the arena has gotten more difficult to navigate these important things we're talking about, not better. Like there's no real like guidelines, and I say leadership in the sport right now to make it better for the players and the coaches. That's what I think. That has surprised me. It's like, what are we doing? It's a balance of everything, right? Like NIL is not a bad thing. NIL with no like rules, regulations, no guardrails, that is a bad thing. That's not going to help people in the big picture. It's not going to be for the greater, it might help that one person, but for the greater good of the sport and people, without like, this is how we're going to play this game, it's not better.
As you reference off the top, the title of this show is The It Factory. Everybody has an it factor. The great performers that you've seen, is there a commonality? Is there a red thread that you define as their it factor?
Yeah, I think the guys that are, it's really what we're talking about. I think they are so committed to their craft. Like, I think of some of the great players that really we had at Boise State that went on to the NFL. I think of some of the great players that we and didn't even go to the NFL. Let me back up on that. There were really good, great college players that had a wonderful career at the end of the process.
Yeah.
How committed they were to just like working, relationships, invested in this school at this place, and took ownership of like the stuff going on that wasn't right for them. They were going to work harder. And I think about Buda Baker and, Vita Vea and Jake Browning, and I could go on and on.
Yeah.
But how committed they were to the craft of just improving of all the things I just spoke about. Like it's just, that's the it.
Yeah.
They're not second guessing. They're not thinking around, is this going to work out for me? Are we going to be okay when we're 7-6 the year before we go to the college football playoffs? Those guys weren't second guessing that. They're like, we are all in and we're doubling down.
Love that. All right. So you've had so many amazing football experiences, life experiences. Is a big question, but I'd love you to take a run at it. How would you answer and complete the following statement? It all comes down to.
Ooh-wee. Yeah, I think it all comes down, I don't know, gosh, there's a bunch of different ways I could go on that. But right now, in this 5-second window I have to answer, I'm going to say relationships.
Yeah.
I just think it's about relationships and caring for others. It's not about just all this achieving and reaching our goals. It's about that while building these lifelong bonds. I think there's a way to get success relatively quickly, and I think you can run over people and ruin relationships, and you can get results faster. And I just think at the end of the day, people are going to come back to regret that. I know when I've done that on little things and some big things, that is like, that's not how I wanted that to go in this relationship. I think it's about like working together and striving together and building like these lifelong bonds while really doing hard work and navigating hard things in life together and supporting each other. Like, that's what it's all about. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, it has been such a joy to have our relationship. I remember the first day I met you when you got the job at UW, and we did a sit-down interview in the stadium in some fancy club. It was great. We talked about culture, and then now I'm calling you like, hey, help me out with my kid and his Pop Warner coach. But thank you, Coach, on so many fronts. I know everybody wants to know, are you going to coach again? You want to answer that one real fast before we leave? You signing anything in the next?
I do. I feel like I'm coaching every day. This is. I think my platforms change a little bit. Like, maybe I'm not into the locker rooms coaching, but I'm working with coaches and other guys and leaders. And I love that. Like, I think all the hard lessons that I've learned and got kicked in the mouth, and punched in the stomach, like, if I can share some of that and just maybe be a guide on the side and help them navigate these really tricky waters, that brings a lot of joy to me.
Yeah, well, you've coached me on every front, so I appreciate that. Thank you for the time, Coach. We got to get you on again, maybe before the season, because I just want to talk about leadership, right? That you are dialed in on that. I think so many people will get a ton of content out of that, so we'll see if we can make that happen prior to the 2023 season, which will be here before we know it, Coach. So thank you for coming.
Love you, Yog, and I love the work that you do and what you're all about, because that's why I enjoy talking to you. We're it's this crazy world we live in. We're just trying to like maybe make a little bit of a difference for somebody.
Just a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. Thank you. There it is. Coach Chris Petersen, coaching people, coaching coaches thankfully coaching me and my kids. He doesn't even know it, but everything he says, I'm basically regurgitating to them. So with that, make sure you subscribe to this, share it with a friend. If you want to watch it, just go to pack-12.com/insider. We drop every Tuesday night, and what a Tuesday night it will be, the night before signing day this week. Stay safe, happy near holidays, and once again, big thanks to Chris Petersen for sharing some time with us. Peace.